Okay, so welcome to session 8. In this presentation, we are going to discuss the organizational structure, which is basically related to the organizational design. Okay, so that's the learning outcome of this session. Okay, right. So let's look at the um, organizational design. Okay, there are 6 principles that scholars have populated together in terms of what must happen, what we must have when it comes to organizational design. Okay, the first one is work specialization, okay. Departmentalization, authority and responsibility, span of control, centralization versus decentralization, and the last one is the formalization. Okay. Now let's have got them one by one. Okay, so work specialization. Okay, it's actually about dividing work activities into separate job tasks. Okay, so if you think about an organization, we can list down a number of work activities, okay, related to certain job. Okay, and after that we need to group them, all right, according to the certain similarities. Okay, so you name it. Okay, for instance, we may need someone to take the orders. We may need someone to. We may need. We may have tasks that include taking the orders, and also doing the invoicing, doing the collection. Okay, and doing the advertising campaign, and so on and so forth. Then we group them into certain functionality. Okay, so we will be able to assign someone who is in charge in certain work specialization. Okay, now that actually leads us to the division of labor. Okay, where in terms of the division of labor, the experts suggest that the individual employees have the opportunity to focus on what they do. Okay, when they on the area that they are good at. Okay, rather than performing the entire activity, so that they can increase the work output. Okay, why can that increase? Why specialization can increase the work output? Well, that's because the economies of scale. Okay, so from economic principle perspective, if we focus on doing the same thing, okay, we will become the expert in doing that thing, and therefore we will be more efficient in doing that thing, basically. Okay, and if you look at McDonald's, for instance, they have the specialization that helps the employees to be more efficient. Okay, now on the other side, that is also the criticism of the communism system, scholars who support the communism system. Okay, Marx in the olden days criticized that the division of labor actually has created what he calls as the alienated. Okay, people become separated one to another. Okay, because they just do whatever they need to do for the organization. Okay, and the other criticism that we also need to consider when it comes to division of labor from the communism system perspective is that people may lose the other skills, okay, because they focus on certain skills. Okay, and you can imagine that in the olden days, before we have evolved our economic system up to this point, we maybe we might have someone who did the job as the farmer. Okay, plant corn, wheat, and so on and so forth. Okay, at the same time, that person may also be the fisherman, for instance. Okay, and so that person catches might go to the sea uh, to catch the fish. Okay, and that person may become the hunter as well. Okay, to get meat for the family, and they may do trading using whatever they can produce. Okay, so with that, we actually expect people in those periods to be all rounders, if you like, in quote unquote. Okay. Now, it is one of the principles when it comes to work design or organizational design. One of the principles is actually to look at the work specialization, to look at the tasks. Okay, therefore we can split the job based on the individual's specialty. Okay, so that's part of the what people say as the modern way to perform the organizational tasks. Okay, right. Now the next one is departmentalization. Okay, there are 5 common forms of departmentalization. Okay, how are which is basically about grouping the activities. Right. In the previous one, basically we list down the number of work activities so we can get someone to specialize on something. Here we group them. We group these activities. Right. Now, how do we group them? It can be based on functional. Okay, so we can group them based on, let's say, engineering jobs, engineering activities, accounting activities, sales activities, marketing activities. All right. Okay, these groups are basically representing these activities. Basically, represent, for instance, human resources group, for instance. So we know a few tasks in there, such as recruitment, training, induction, and so on and so forth. Okay, HR policies, and so on and so forth, for instance. Okay, so we group them based on the functional. Okay, and then the second one is based on products. Okay, that is another form of departmentalization. We group the organization based on the product. Okay, who manage this product category, for instance, that product category. Okay, if you think about the company, such as Camel Annets, for instance, or any other companies, Nestle, Unilever, okay, they have departments managing certain products. And it can also be based on customers. Okay, so we list down the work activities related to managing customers. Okay, so if you think about those companies again, the fast-moving consumer goods companies again, such as Unilever, P&G, Camel Annets, Nestle. Okay, they may have activities aligned to service, for instance, Woolworths. Okay, so that becomes Woolworths account management team. Okay, they may also have activities to service another account, calls, or activities to service customers beyond Woolworths and Coles, such as the away from home customers, like the ones in the at the petrol station, for instance. Okay, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And we can also group them based on geographic departmentalization, which is basically based on the area, the location. Okay, we can group them based on, let's say, this is the organization department in charge in New South Wales business. Okay, or at a higher level, we can also group them based on the region. Okay, this is basically the business that looks after Asia Pacific region, and the other one is North America region, and European region, for instance, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and we can also look at them based on the process. Okay, we manage the department based on process. Okay, like manufacturing and so on and so forth. Yeah, right. Now, we also look at that in today's business landscape, we expect cross-functional teams where organizations may also perform activities that include cross-functional employees, right? Employees from different departments, right? They work together to deliver certain tasks. together. Okay, and that may be based on project basis. Okay, based on project assignments, or that can also be based on uh, it can also be more permanent nature when it comes to cross-functional teams. Okay, so that actually helps reducing the issue in terms of being alienated, and also reducing the issue in terms of people only focus on their own skills. Okay, that opens opportunities for the individual employees to learn the other skills as well. Okay, right. Now, authority and responsibility, which is the next one. Authority actually refers to the rights inherent in the managerial position to give orders and expect the orders to be obeyed. Okay, now that authority, after we get the authority as the employee, we also need to show our responsibility. Okay, by performing that, by performing the certain authorities given to us. Okay, therefore. And the other thing that I'd like to highlight here is to understand the authority and responsibility, we need to understand the chain of command. Okay, and the line of authority extends from the upper organizational level to lower levels, and that also helps us to clarify who reports to whom. Okay, in the organizational structure. Okay, and span of control. Okay, now span of control refers to the number of employees reporting to a manager. Okay, how many employees report to a manager? Okay, scholars suggest that small spans are preferred. Okay, but there is no consensus in terms of how small is small. Okay, is that too small, or is that a good small, or is that a bad small? Okay. And typically they expect that less than 6 workers, or a maximum of 6 people. Okay, now look at your own organization. Okay, so, because the number of employees in here, and you can also argue that the number of employees in here reflects the size of the power that the employee has. Okay, if you can imagine that someone who is in charge on 20 people, is quite strong actually compared to same person at the at the same line, but only in charge on 6 employees, for instance. Okay, but on the other side, we also need to consider that how effective we are in terms of managing number of employees. Okay, right. And the other issue is the centralization versus decentralization. Okay, and that reflects the centralization reflects the degree to which the decision making takes place at upper level of the organization, whilst decentralization is actually the degree where the lower level managers provide input, and in fact they may also make the decisions. Right. Well, in terms of centralization and decentralization, I think it is also about the organizational culture. At some point of time, we need to think about the centralization to have a faster decision making. And but if we depend on the upper level to make decisions on any issues that the organization is facing, then we also need to think about the how we can groom our how we can design our succession plan. Okay, right. So and the last one is the formalization, which is basically about the how standardized an organization's jobs are, and the extent to which employee behavior is guided by rules and procedure. Okay. If the organization has a highly formalized style, okay, so you expect that they have a number of rules, okay, and clearly defined procedures covering work processes and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, there is a tendency that today's organizations rely less on strict rules and standardization to guide and regulate the employee behavior. Okay. If you look at, for instance, that spirit is actually taken to our business dress actually. Okay, so there is a tendency that we have more become more and more casual. Okay, especially on Friday. A lot of employees are basically wearing casual. Okay, so that's formalization. Okay. All right. So there are the 6 principles when it comes to organizational design. Okay. So let's have a look at the next one here, which is basically the organizational design itself. Okay, and there are a few things I'd like to discuss here. The first one is the simple structure, functional structure, decisional structure, and matrix structure. Right? These guys reflect the traditional organizational designs. Okay. Now let's have a look at them. The simple structure refers to an organizational design with low departmentalization. Okay, wide spans of control. Okay, we may have someone sitting as the GM or the owner of the business, and underneath that person, we have a number of people reporting this person. Okay, so the authority is centralized in a single person, and they have little formalization. Okay, so someone can just drop in and talk to the boss. Hey, boss, knock, knock, knock. Can I talk to you? We just get this new customer, a new customer wanting to buy this, and so on and so forth. Okay, so pretty much, if you look at the small business, small enterprises, they have the tendency of adopting the simple structure. There are pluses and minuses of strengths and weaknesses. If you look at that, it is fast in terms of making a decision, flexible, inexpensive because they don't hire managers, okay, or they don't hire the next level, okay, or the middleman between the top management and also the operational staff. It has a clear accountability, okay. The challenge is not appropriate as organization grows. Okay, so if you think about a small business, when it is still small, everything is manageable by the owner. Okay, the owner becomes the marketing managers, actually becomes the human resources manager. The owner hires people, okay, fires people if you like, trains people, and so on and so forth. The owner may also become the buyers of the merchandise that they want to offer in the store, for instance. Okay, the owner may also step in when someone cannot come to work because of calling in sick, for instance. Okay, and so on and so forth. But when the business grows, think about if the business grows. Let's say this our entrepreneur in here opens another branch. Okay, now that may be a challenge, right? If our entrepreneur here still adopts a similar strategy, okay, because that person cannot be in 2 places, okay, and in some countries in Asia Pacific region, there's a tendency that this owner may hire someone from the family, okay, to help them managing the growing business. Okay, that's actually one of the driving forces why, if you look at the Asia Pacific region, excluding Australia, a lot of small businesses are basically family business. Okay, so and it's also normally dominated by certain ethnic background. Okay, and reliance on one person is actually quite risky, actually, because what about if that person cannot function at some point of time because of having illness or cannot come to work. Okay, so people may struggle, may find it hard to make a decision. Okay, and so on and so forth. Okay, right. So that's simple structure basically, and the next one is the functional structure, which is basically they group similar to related occupational specialties together, okay, based on that function, okay. So if you think about a simple organizational chart like this, for instance, we have someone as the CEO or GM, if you like, and underneath that person, we have a group of function, and the next one we have another group of function, and so on and so forth. Okay. The the good news about this is basically cost saving advantages from specialization. Okay, because of the economies of scale. Again, minimal with minimal duplication of people and equipment. Okay, and the employees can focus on doing their job. Okay, and the employees are also getting better in doing the job because they work with someone else, with a group of other people who have similar tasks. So we expect them to share their knowledge and keep expanding their knowledge, building on their knowledge. Okay. The problem is pursuit of functional goals may cause the manager to lose sight of what's best for the overall organization. That actually is related to the silentness of the organization. Okay, where its function may only have their own interests to achieve their own department's goal. Okay, and you may recall that in the theoretical framework discussion, we discussed about the balanced scorecard, where Norton and Kaplan suggest to have a balanced scorecard that people across functional groups look at the same scorecard and they achieve the same scorecard basically. Okay, and again, similar to Marx's criticism, functional specialists become insulated, okay, or alienated, and have little understanding of what the other units are doing. Okay, and that is in line with the with Karl Marx's criticisms ages ago. Okay, in terms of functional structure. Okay, so knowing that, a lot of management practitioners and also scholars actually try to promote cross-functional team. Okay, promote the balanced scorecard and so on and so forth. Okay. The next one is the divisional structure, where it is made up of separate business units or divisions. The good news about that is that they can focus on the results, and the bad news is actually duplication of activities and resources increases costs and reduce the efficiency. Okay. And the next one is matrix structure, where we have we combine the functional and divisional structure to enhance the horizontal coordination and the sharing of information. So if you have several functions in here, and underneath each function, we have someone representing that function for the cross-functional work. Okay, so it creates dual chain of command. Okay. Now, the good news about that is to provide the excellent coordination. The issue is the dual lines of reporting may create conflict and confusion. Okay. Right. So that's basically the traditional ones. Now let's look at the contemporary organizational design. Okay. The managers basically find that the traditional designs often are not appropriate for today's challenges. Okay, because in today's business landscape, we expect that the business has become more and more dynamic, and also the environment has become more and more complicated. Therefore, we need something to be more to be leaner, flexible, and also innovative. And you may recall that we also discussed that in today's business landscape, we expect to have what you call the digitization of the workplace. Okay, where the environment out there is a changing, is a constant change. Okay, so that's one of the things that we also need to consider. Okay, so there are three things that we can discuss here in terms of contemporary organizational designs. Okay, the team structure, project structure, boundaryless organization. Okay, let's have a look at them. The team structure is actually one in which the entire organization is made up of work teams that do the organization's work. Okay, so based on the organization may set up a certain team to perform certain tasks for the customers, for instance. Okay, so here the upside of that of this team structure is actually the employees are more involved and empowered. and they reduce the barriers among functional areas. So they are not going to look at, I'm from marketing, I'm from HR, I'm from whatever, but they look at it as a team. Okay. The issue is that no clear chain of command. Okay, pressure on teams to perform, which is another issue. Similar to that one, we have what we call the project structure, except this one here is more temporary. Okay, so they organize these structures actually reflect the organizing of the employees to work continuously on projects. Okay, so after they service these clients, they move on to the next clients, and so on and so forth. No formal departments. Okay, so after completing one project, the employees move on to the next project. Okay. The upside of this structure is actually about being fluid and flexible design that can respond to the changes, and they can also make a faster decision making. Okay, and the issue in here is the complexity of assigning people to projects and task and personality conflicts as well. Okay, right now this is probably quite contemporary, reflecting the today's business landscape, where we have the boundaryless structure. Okay, where a structure that is not defined by or limited to artificial horizontal, vertical, or external boundaries. Okay, so they include the virtual and network types of organizations. Okay, so the upside of that is actually highly flexible and responsive. They use the talent wherever it's found. The issue in there is having lack of control and communication difficulties. Right now, in today's business landscape, we understand that we benefit from the use of digital technologies, where we can discuss with a number of people, using internet and so on and so forth. Okay, so welcome to the digital world again. Okay, and in terms of virtual organization, it consists of a small core of full-time employees and outside specialists temporarily hired as needed to work on projects. Okay, so that's a virtual organization. And network organization is slightly different to that. This type of organization uses its own employees to do some work activities, and networks of outside suppliers to provide other needed product components of work processes. Okay, so for instance, network structures enable the organization to outsource customer contact team to offshore call centers. Okay, so now it may sound familiar to us. Okay, when we call certain service organizations with the mobile phone or any other services. Okay, we may speak to someone from overseas. Okay, in our call center. Okay, right. So brief summary, and there are the key concepts that that I'd like you to be aware of. The 6 principles of the organizational design. Okay, and we also discussed the 2 types of organizational structure: traditional and contemporary. Okay, right. So basically, that's today's topic, and I'll see you in the next session.